When I opened the bedroom door, the walls were bare. My photos, my clothes, my perfume bottles, gone. And on the bed, hers. She'd moved me to the basement without a single word. That morning, I'd made her favorite tea. I'd folded the laundry. I'd even polished the silver before heading out for my afternoon walk, just like every other Tuesday since I moved in to help with the baby. I returned to find my world boxed up and shoved downstairs next to the water heater. Not even a conversation, not a single explanation, just silence, and a locked door where my room used to be. I stood there holding the house key I once gave them, feeling it grow heavier in my hand, as if it now belonged to a stranger. And in that moment, I realized I had raised a son who let this happen. So I ask you, what would you do if your daughter-in-law erased you from your own family, one box at a time? Comment below with your thoughts and your city. Let's talk. I know I'm not the only one. Where are you watching from? And what would you have done if you came home and your entire life was moved to the basement without a word? My name is Ruth Ellen Givens. I'm 68 years old, retired school teacher, former Sunday school leader, proud mother. And until recently, I believed I was a respected part of my son's household. My husband Alan passed away 7 years ago. Cancer, the kind that creeps in and leaves your world in ashes. He was the steady hand in my life, the kind who could fix a faucet, mend a fence, or calm a storm with a single glance. We built our home from nothing. We raised Marcus, our only child, in a house where laughter was louder than television, where homemade meals were daily rituals, and birthdays weren't complete without my lemon meringue pie. When Alan died, Marcus was my rock. He called every evening, brought groceries on weekends. When he proposed to Vanessa, I was the first to know. I remember the first time I met her. She walked in wearing sharp heels and sharper words. Corporate, confident, polished. Beautiful, yes, but there was something clipped in her tone, something distant. When I hugged her, she barely touched my shoulder. I told myself she was just shy. Vanessa wasn't raised like we were. She grew up fast, big city, private schools, a mother who never cooked, a father who measured love in gifts and absence. She and Marcus met at a business seminar. He was trying to grow his financial advisory firm. She already had 2 promotions at her company by the time they married. The wedding was tasteful, elegant, expensive. I paid for the florist and the band because Marcus's account had taken a hit that year. Vanessa didn't thank me directly. Her mother did, though it felt more like a nod of obligation than appreciation. After they moved into their new home, a sleek, modern place in Brookridge Hills, I was invited over. Maybe once every few months. Just birthdays, holidays. Vanessa kept things very scheduled. The kind of woman who coordinated family time through a shared Google Calendar. Then came the baby. Caleb, oh, that child. He brought joy back into my lungs. The moment I held him, I felt my husband's spirit. Something shifted in me. I offered to help. Watch him while they worked. Cook, clean, whatever they needed. Vanessa hesitated, but Marcus, oh, Marcus, he said, Mom, it would mean everything if you moved in. We trust you. So I did. I packed up our old home, sold what I didn't need, and moved into their guest room, thinking I was becoming a part of something bigger again. At first it was peaceful. Caleb giggled in my arms while I rocked him to sleep. I folded their laundry, left notes on the fridge. I even arranged the spice rack alphabetically. Vanessa didn't comment, but she didn't complain either. She was distant, but civil. Until the baby's first birthday. She planned the party without consulting me. Catered food, designer cupcakes. All her co-workers invited. I was told to just enjoy the day as if I were an outsider attending a community fair. When I offered to bring the lemon meringue pie, she said, "We've already got a dessert vendor, Ruth, but thanks." I stood in the corner that day, holding a plastic plate, watching strangers hand my grandson gifts he didn't recognize, while Vanessa introduced me loud enough for her friends to hear as Marcus's mum. She helps out around the house sometimes. That was the first shift, a crack in the foundation, the first time I felt removed. Still, I told myself it's just the way of the new generation. Efficiency, boundaries, professionalism in the home. I didn't want to be the clingy mother-in-law. I kept my head down, stayed helpful, and convinced myself that silence was dignity. But now, thinking back, I realized that silence allowed something else to grow. Not just distance, but erasure, one invisible inch at a time. It started with the labels, on the pantry jars, on the drawers, on the cabinets. Vanessa bought a label maker and printed neat little white strips with black text, Marcus's supplements, Vanessa's mugs, baby's bottles, guest items. At first I chuckled. She was organized overly so. But then I noticed something peculiar. My tea bags, which used to sit on the counter, had been relocated to a plastic bin labeled Ruth. My favorite kettle, replaced with a digital temperature-controlled one I didn't know how to use. One evening, as I was searching for my wool socks in the laundry, I found them in a bag labeled miscellaneous storage. Basement. The worst part wasn't the relocation, it was the unspoken rules wrapped around it. No one said anything. No one explained. Things simply moved. Just like me. Then came the passive remarks. One morning I offered to take Caleb to the park. Vanessa looked at me, smiled a little too wide, and said, "That's sweet, but I'd prefer if the nanny handled it. She's certified in CPR." The words sat in the air like smoke. I wanted to ask, "What am I then?" But I just nodded and turned away. That week, I noticed Vanessa started referring to me as the help when talking to her friends. Not directly, but I heard it. "Oh, don't worry. I have someone at home who does that. I barely cook anymore, our housekeeper." Well, my mother-in-law is there. It stung more than I expected, because I did clean the bathrooms, I did cook the dinners, I did wash the dishes. But not because I was the help. I was a mother, a grandmother. I thought I was contributing to a home I was part of. Then something happened at Caleb's daycare pickup that knocked the air from my lungs. I had walked in, smiling, ready to scoop him into my arms. But the receptionist, new to the facility, looked at me with suspicion. "Sorry, ma'am, and you are—" I was confused. "I'm his grandmother. I pick him up on Tuesdays." She glanced at the form. "You're not on the approved list." I blinked. My name had been there. I'd picked him up before. But Vanessa must have changed it. Quietly. Without a word. As if I were no longer trustworthy. I stood there for a moment too long, pretending to text someone, pretending it was fine. But inside, something began to crack. That night, I asked Marcus, quietly, at the kitchen sink while the dishwasher hummed. He looked up from his phone. Oh, yeah. Vanessa thought it was safer if only she and I were on the list. Nothing personal. Nothing personal? But it was personal. Every step, every shift, every rearrangement. It all pointed to one thing: I was no longer part of the family structure. I was an accessory, a convenience, a shadow in the background. Even my meals began to change. Vanessa started ordering out more. Smoothie packs, frozen meal kits, all tailored to her calorie goals. If I cooked something from scratch, it would sit untouched. She would wrinkle her nose and say, "Oh, Ruth, you still use butter. That's why your generation had cholesterol issues." She said it with a laugh, like it was just a fact, like I wasn't standing right there with a ladle in my hand. One Sunday, I was sweeping the hallway when I overheard her on a video call. I swear it's like living with a ghost. She's always there, cleaning, humming, rearranging things like she still owns the place. Honestly, I don't even think Marcus notices. He grew up with her, he doesn't see it. But me? I'm going crazy. I stood frozen. Ghost. That word clung to me like a cold sheet. That night, I didn't eat dinner with them. I stayed in my room. But when I came out to get a glass of water around midnight, I noticed something missing. The photo frame of Alan and me from our 30th anniversary, the one Marcus gave me, was gone from the hallway. I found it in the hall closet behind a stack of winter coats. The erasure wasn't violent. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was silent. And by the time I realized what was happening, I was already being replaced, rewritten, redefined, by someone who never knew where this family began. It was Mother's Day, the first since Alan passed away. The first I spent not in our garden, not with tea and tulips from Marcus, not with warm hugs from a grandchild climbing into my lap. No, this one started with silence and ended with exile. I had woken early, dressed in the lavender cardigan Alan used to love, and baked cinnamon rolls the way my son always liked them. The scent filled the house, warm and nostalgic. I laid the table, polished the silver, and folded napkins like little tulips. I even arranged fresh peonies in the vase that sat untouched all year. But the morning passed, then the afternoon, and no one came. By 4 p.m., I heard the front door open. Vanessa walked in, laughing, arm in arm with Marcus holding shopping bags and balloons. Caleb skipped behind them, his hands sticky with something sweet. I blinked. "You went out?" I asked, my voice too quiet to sound anything but small. Vanessa turned, startled. "Oh, yeah. Marcus took me to brunch. It's Mother's Day after all." I stared at her. "I'm a mother too," I whispered. She smiled, not unkindly, but with the kind of gentleness people reserve for things they don't respect. "I know. That's why we got you something." She reached into one of the bags and handed me a tiny plastic-wrapped rose. From the dollar store. I stared at it. It wasn't even real. I looked at Marcus. His eyes were on his phone. "I made breakfast," I said. "And lunch. You didn't think to include me today." Vanessa shrugged. "We figured you'd want time to yourself. You seem happiest in your own space lately." I clenched my hands. my own space. And then it happened. That night, I went upstairs to retrieve a sweater from my closet, and the door wouldn't open. The knob turned, but something heavy blocked it. I pressed harder. When I finally managed to crack it open an inch, I saw the boxes. All of my things folded, bagged sealed, were stacked against the door. Shoes in bags, coats folded, even my journals in a plastic tub. At the top of the pile, a sign in Vanessa's neat handwriting. Move to basement, to free space for nursery remodel. I stumbled back down the stairs, heart thudding. She had touched my belongings. Without a word, I ran to the basement. Cold air, damp walls, spider webs in the corners. There by the old boiler sat my boxes, my life packed up like clutter. I opened one. Inside were photos of my wedding, my mother's handkerchief, the quilt I had sewn when Marcus was born. All dumped in silence, I sank to the cement floor, clutching the faded cloth to my chest. And for the first time since Alan's death, I wept. Not the dignified kind, the raw kind. The kind that rises from the hollow of your ribs and spills into your palms before you can stop it. The kind of grief that isn't just for a person, but for a place, a role, a home that no longer sees you. I reached for my phone and called Marcia, my childhood friend, who had moved across the country, but always said, "If anything happens, call me." She picked up on the second ring. "Ruth, are you okay?" I couldn't speak at first. Just the sound of her voice cracked something open. "She moved my things," I said, "to the basement, without telling me." Silence. "Then that girl's always had sharp teeth. But you, Ruth, you were never supposed to be their doormat." I wiped my nose. She packed up my memories like they were garbage. "Then maybe it's time," Marcia said. "For what?" "To stop letting them treat you like furniture. And start remembering who built that house in the first place." That night, I didn't sleep in my room. I didn't sleep in the basement either. I sat on the back porch in the dark, holding a photo of Marcus as a baby, wrapped in the quilt I'd stitched with aching hands and love. And I whispered to Alan in the stars, "They may not see me now, but I see them." And that's when the resolve began to settle. Not angry, not bitter, just steady. I would not shout, I would not beg, but I would not be erased. It started small. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't confront Vanessa, not yet. I had learned far too late that anger made me look irrational, while her manipulation appeared composed. No, this time I chose silence not as surrender, but as strategy. The next morning, while Vanessa was at work and Marcus took Caleb to daycare, I tiptoed to the hallway closet where the paperwork was kept. In the shadows behind old tax folders and manuals no one read, I found what I needed: copies of Alan's will. There were two versions. The original, notarized 2 years before Alan passed, left me lifetime rights to the house and a monthly stipend from his trust. That was the promise Alan made to me on our 30th anniversary. "You'll never have to depend on anyone else, Ruth. I'll make sure of that." But the second will, the one Marcus had handed to the lawyer during that cold and awkward reading after the funeral, was different. No mention of a stipend, no lifetime rights to the house, just vague language about family use and shared occupancy, giving Marcus and his legal spouse full control over the estate unless contested. I remember the lawyer blinking oddly as if something didn't sit right, but I was too numb with grief to push. Until now. I took both copies and photographed every page. Next, I dusted off the little voice recorder Alan had once used to dictate notes for his woodshop projects. I tested it, smiled at its sharp clarity, and tucked it inside my old cardigan. For the next few days, I became background noise in my own home, a ghost who heard everything. And ghosts remember. Vanessa over dinner. We should convert the attic too. Your mother won't need her room forever. Vanessa on the phone with her friend. It's not her house anyway. I mean, Alan left it to Marcus. And me, technically. She's just lingering. Vanessa whispering in the hallway. She acts like she's still the queen here. Maybe she needs a reality check. Each word a thread. Each thread became a rope. And I was quietly braiding them. That weekend, I reached out to Mr. Langston Allen's old friend and the notary who had signed the original will. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. He looked older, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. Ruth, it's been a long time. How's the family? I gave him a long look. Complicated. When I showed him both wills, his face changed. I never signed this second one, he said slowly, pointing to the new version. This is not my seal, and that's not how I format my witness block. He paused. This looks doctored. That word sat in the air like a gun on the table. He agreed to give me a signed statement. If this gets legal, he warned you'll need a real lawyer, not just a notary's testimony. I nodded. I already made the first call. Because a few days earlier, I'd tracked down Lisa Alvarez, the granddaughter of my old neighbor, now a rising estate attorney with a reputation for dealing with family betrayals. When I met Lisa at her downtown office, she greeted me with an embrace and said, "My grandmother used to say you made the best pumpkin pie on the street." She told me if I ever needed strength, I should talk to Ruth. I choked up. She took the documents, asked precise questions, and promised to dig deeper discreetly. "You're not alone, Mrs. Wilson," she said. That was the moment I stopped trembling, because for the first time in years, someone saw me. Back at the house, I started packing not to leave, but to safeguard. I moved my keepsakes, documents, and photographs into sealed bins and hid them in the crawl space under the laundry room. I transferred funds from my personal account into a separate legal retainer fund under Lisa's guidance. I digitized everything. Vanessa didn't notice. She was too busy coordinating nursery colors. But one night, she walked into the kitchen and paused when she saw me reviewing documents at the table. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" I smiled, sorting my affairs, just making sure everything's in the right place. She forced a polite smile and disappeared into the hallway. But I knew in that moment she sensed something had shifted, because silence when purposeful is louder than screams. The night after that, I slipped a small note under Marcus's pillow. Just 3 sentences written in my neatest cursive. "Son, do you remember what your father told you the night before his surgery? About the will, about me. Because I do. And now I have proof. Love, Mom." I didn't see his face when he read it, but I did hear something in the hallway the next morning. Something raw. A whispered argument behind their locked bedroom door. Then quiet. And quiet can be the sharpest kind of warning. I was ready now. Let them keep planning their empire. Let them underestimate the woman in the basement. Because I wasn't just packing memories anymore. I was loading the truth, and truth, when it arrives, doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. It started on a Sunday, a bright, deceptively normal morning. Church bells were ringing down the street, and I had returned home earlier than they expected. Vanessa's voice drifted from the upstairs hallway. She was laughing on the phone. She's still clinging to her rights. Poor thing doesn't realize she's already out of the picture. Marcus just doesn't want to say it. My fingers tightened around my purse handle. That day I didn't retreat to the basement. I climbed the stairs, each step a refusal. I stood in their doorway. Her laughter stopped the second she saw me. I said nothing, just stared at her until her smile dropped like a mask. Later that evening after dinner, I sat Marcus down in the den. He looked tired, torn. "Do you know how many nights I lay awake wondering if I raised you wrong?" I began. "Mom, let me finish." I pulled the original will from my folder, placed it gently in front of him. Then I placed the forged one beside it. He stared, blinked. His face went pale. I thought this was the one Dad left," he said, voice cracking. "This is the one Vanessa gave to the lawyer." "I know," I replied. "I also know she changed it. I have proof. And I have a lawyer now, Marcus. Her name is Lisa Alvarez." He sat back, eyes wide. "You lawyered up." I nodded slowly, quietly, but effectively. That was when Vanessa stormed into the room, arms crossed, eyes blazing. "What's going on here?" Marcus stood up too quickly. "Vanessa Mom says this isn't the right will." Vanessa barely glanced at the documents. "This is ridiculous. Alan told me he was going to revise it. He must have changed his mind before." I cut her off. Calm, cold, unshakable. "Alan never changed his mind about protecting me. And even if he had, he wouldn't have faked a notary seal." Her face twitched. I took out the letter from Mr. Langston, notarized, and signed, confirming that the second will was a forgery. I placed it on top of the stack. "Do you want to explain this?" I asked. Silence. Marcus looked between us. His mouth opened, then closed. Then in the smallest voice, "Vanessa, is it true?" She hesitated, then shifted blame like a reflex. "I just wanted what was best for us. You know how tight things were after Alan died. Your mum has her pension. She has Social Security. We needed the house. Caleb needed the house. I stood, needed Vanessa. Then you should have asked, not rewritten a dead man's words, and shoved me into the basement." Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I turned to Marcus. "I loved your wife. I welcomed her. I gave her this home without asking for anything in return. But I will not be erased." I leaned closer, "and I will not go quietly." Marcus sat down heavily. He buried his face in his hands. "What do I do now?" I looked at him, not with anger, but with deep, worn sorrow. "You decide who you are. A husband, a son, a man of integrity, or someone who lets lies build the roof over his family's head." Vanessa scoffed. "You can't kick us out. Not legally." I gave her a tight smile. "I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm just taking my house back." And with that, I left them in the room with their truths, their choices, their future dangling between silence and shame. That week, Lisa filed the challenge officially. a motion to freeze all assets tied to Alan's estate until a forensic review of both wills was completed. Vanessa screamed when she found out. Her voice rang down the hall like a broken siren. "You're destroying your son's life for what revenge?" "No," I replied, quiet but firm. "For justice." Marcus refused to take sides at first. He disappeared into work, stayed late at the office, avoided meals. But one night, I found a note slipped under my door. It read, "I'm sorry, Mum. I didn't know. I was scared. I thought love meant silence. But maybe love means standing up, even if it means breaking something to fix it." I didn't cry, but something inside me cracked open a doorway to healing. The legal process was slow, painful. The judge issued a temporary protective order over the house, giving me full occupancy rights again. Vanessa moved Caleb into her sister's for a while, until this all blows over. She glared at me as she packed. "You'll die alone," she hissed. I watched her close the car trunk. "I'd rather die alone," I said softly, "than live buried in a basement you think I deserved." She didn't reply. She just drove away. The first thing I did after regaining full occupancy of the house wasn't revenge. It was painting the basement door shut, not with rage, not with pettiness, with finality. That door had become a symbol of everything I had swallowed in silence, every whisper, every boxed memory, every cold dinner eaten alone beside a laundry machine. And now I sealed it, not out of hate, but to remind myself that I never belonged down there in the first place. Lisa. My lawyer moved fast. With the will deemed fraudulent by a forensic document analyst and a sworn testimony from Mr. Langston, the probate court issued a formal injunction Vanessa's version of the will was nullified. My status as joint legal heir with Marcus, as Alan originally intended, was reinstated, and with that ruling, I took a breath for the first time in months. But peace was not what came next. Vanessa returned livid, volatile, and unafraid to show it. She arrived with her sister, marching into my home as though the court had never ruled. "You think a few signatures can erase 10 years of my marriage?" she shouted. Lisa stepped between us, calm, surgical. "No one's erasing anything. But fraud has consequences." Vanessa flinched at the word. Fraud. It hung in the air like thunder. "What happens to Caleb now?" she demanded. I looked her in the eye. "That's for Marcus to decide. But don't confuse Caleb with your greed. He still has a family." She narrowed her eyes. "You think you're his family?" I didn't flinch. "I know I am." I sat down with Marcus privately a few days later. He looked broken. The weight of guilt had etched itself into the corners of his eyes. "I don't know how to fix this, Mom." "You don't," I said gently. "You learn from it, and you do better." He rubbed his forehead. "She's scared I'll leave." "Will you?" He looked down. "I don't know." I handed him a thick brown envelope. "What's this?" "The last financial tie I had with you two, my share of the business I helped you start." I signed the paperwork. "It's yours now." Free and clear. He stared at me like I'd just handed him fire. "I don't want to take this from you." "You're not," I replied. "I'm giving it. Because I need you to succeed. But not at the cost of my dignity." That same week, I cut the automatic transfer that paid their mortgage. I stopped the grocery stipends, the cell phone plans, even the emergency savings account they'd been dipping into for years under the label just in case. Lisa helped me audit everything I had ever funneled their way monthly, quarterly, yearly. It added up to a staggering amount. I had never tracked it. That was my mistake. One I would never repeat again. Vanessa called that night. She didn't yell. She pleaded, "You don't understand, Audrey. We're behind on everything. Caleb's school tuition is due next month. I'm doing my best." "I know you are," I replied calmly. "And now you'll have to keep doing your best without my silence funding it." She was quiet for a long time, then a whisper. "Was I really that cruel to you?" The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. I answered truthfully, "Yes." Click. She didn't call again after that. Weeks passed. The house was quiet again, peaceful. I moved back into my original bedroom upstairs, replaced the curtains, repaired the door frame that had warped from humidity in the basement. One morning, I sat on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee as the sun broke over the trees and realized I felt something I hadn't in years. Free. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't come in applause or announcements. It comes in small, stubborn joys, like sitting on the porch with tea at 6 a.m., listening to birds instead of footsteps, and knowing no one will ask why you're there. For the first time in years, I began to live on my own terms. The upstairs bedroom. My bedroom again looked nothing like the guest quarters I had been forced into. I decorated it with soft lilac linens, sheer curtains that let in morning light, and a bookshelf full of old novels I had long abandoned during the years of putting others first. The first photo I framed wasn't of Alan, it was of me, at 26. Standing in front of the bakery I opened with just $1,000 and a fire in my gut. That photo reminded me I hadn't always been someone who got moved without a word. I had built things, fought for things, survived worse. I wasn't just a mother-in-law. I wasn't just the old lady in the basement. I was Audrey Wilson, and I still had more to give to myself. Lisa, ever strategic, suggested something that took me by surprise. "You should consider reopening the bakery," she said over lunch one day. I blinked. At my age, she shrugged. "That's the thing. You've earned this age. You have your own recipes, your story, your name. And now you have capital." She wasn't wrong. With the funds I had recovered from ending the silent subsidies to Marcus and Vanessa, and the legal reinstatement of my half in the family's shared real estate assets, I had enough to start over, but not alone. I called Rosa. She had been my assistant baker 20 years ago before she moved away to care for her ailing mother. "Still got your hands?" I teased when she picked up. "Still kneading dough before sunrise," she said, laughing. "Is that an invitation or a threat?" "It's both," I said. "Let's build something again." 3 weeks later, I signed the lease on a cozy corner space in town. Nothing fancy, just brick walls, wide windows, and enough room for 3 ovens and a display case. We named it Upstairs Again, because that's what I was doing, moving up. Word got out fast. Audrey Wilson's back. The woman who made the peach galette that won the county fair 3 years in a row. She's baking again. We sold out the first weekend. Old friends came. Even strangers who had heard whispers of the woman with the lawsuit against her own daughter-in-law showed up curious but supportive. I didn't care why they came. I cared that I was living again. Not surviving, not shrinking, living. One Friday afternoon, as I restocked the counter with warm loaves of rosemary bread, I heard a soft voice behind me. Grandma Audrey. It was Caleb, taller than I remembered, shoulders square, eyes unsure. I saw the sign. I didn't know if I could come in. My throat tightened. You're always welcome here. He smiled awkwardly. Can I help after school sometimes? I don't want to go straight home anymore. I nodded. I'd like that. We didn't talk about Vanessa, or the will, or the basement. We talked about flour measurements and how to test if a cake is done without stabbing it to death. We rebuilt our relationship one pastry at a time, and in doing so, I found something more powerful than revenge: resilience. I was no longer afraid of being alone, because I had remembered who I was before they forgot, and this time I wouldn't let anyone move me again without my permission. The mornings at Upstairs Again were sacred, filled with rising dough, gentle jazz on the radio, and the soft thump of fresh flour hitting the table. But that morning, a thick envelope sat waiting in my mailbox, from the courthouse, not addressed to me, but to Marcus Wilson. I knew immediately what it was, and I knew I was about to cross a line that would split my life into 2 chapters before the lawsuit and after. I pressed my palm to my chest and whispered, "Am I really about to do this?" What Vanessa had done wasn't just cruel, it was criminal. The forged documents, the impersonated signature, the falsified notary on the new version of Marcus's will, filed quietly 2 weeks before his final surgery. She had rewritten my son's legacy, made herself sole executor, cut me out completely, even though the original will had clearly stated that in the event of his death, the home accounts and all shared investments would be held jointly between his wife and me, with equal rights of inheritance and allocation for Caleb. Instead, she turned it into a private empire, and I had the proof, certified by my lawyer, reviewed by a forensic handwriting analyst, notarized. Lisa had warned me, if you go forward with this, people will talk. You're suing your own daughter-in-law. It'll look like greed. It'll look like vengeance. I nodded. Let them think what they want. She buried me in the basement like I didn't exist. I won't let her erase Marcus's intent too. Lisa handed me the final document. Sign it then. And I did. Within 48 hours, the local paper picked it up. Mother-in-law files lawsuit, says will was forged by son's wife. The comments section exploded. This woman's bitter. Let the son rest in peace. If that was my mum, I'd cut her off too. Team Audrey. That daughter-in-law has always looked sneaky. Even Rosa blinked when she saw the headline taped to our bakery window. You sure you're ready for the firestorm? I slid a peach tart into the oven. I've baked through worse. Then Caleb stopped showing up. No call, no message, nothing. It broke me in places I didn't expect. Not because I was surprised, but because I had started to believe that I could repair what had been shattered. Until I remembered what Vanessa was likely telling him behind closed doors. She's destroying us. She only cares about money. She wants the house. But I didn't want the house. I wanted the truth to matter. Court proceedings began. Vanessa was polished as always. Black suit, crocodile tears, and a lawyer with a fake, sympathetic frown. She spoke about family betrayal. I submitted the original will. The expert witness testified. The judge's face did not shift once, but her questions cut like a razor. Did you present this amended will to the probate office before or after the plaintiff's inquiry? Vanessa hesitated, and in that flicker, I saw her castle crumble. The case made national attention in a Facebook group about inheritance betrayal. Thousands of comments. I don't know. That grandma's going too far. No, she's fighting for her son's wishes. Would you let someone rewrite your child's legacy? That last comment hit me hardest, because the answer was no, I wouldn't. Caleb finally came to the bakery after the third court hearing. He stood there silent with a letter in his hand. I read the documents, he said. I saw what she did. But she's still my mum. I nodded, and Marcus was still my son. A beat of silence. I don't know how to be between you both, he whispered. You don't have to be, I said. Just don't let lies be louder than love. I won the case, but I lost something too. I lost the hope that we could all go back to how it was. But maybe that's the point. Some things aren't meant to be restored. They're meant to be rebuilt stronger, clearer, with truth as the foundation. The house looked the same from the outside. Grey shutters, blue door, a porch swing that hadn't moved since Marcus passed. But I wasn't there to reclaim bricks and walls. I was there to say goodbye to something deeper. I stepped out of the car and stood across the street, arms folded, watching, as Caleb rode his bike up the driveway. A backpack flopping from one side, his helmet crooked his little legs, pedaling like he was chasing the sun. He didn't see me, but I saw him pause at the door. Vanessa opened it. She smiled like nothing was broken, and just for a second, 1 second, he looked back, not at me, but at the space where he once found me waiting with chocolate chip cookies and a book. It was enough. Enough to remind me why I did what I did. The next day, Lisa found me cleaning out the back shelf at the bakery. What you doing with all this old paperwork? I held up a worn notebook with Marcus's initials. Letting go, she smiled, then held out a small envelope. You might want to open this first. It was a thank you card, handwritten, wobbly letters. Dear Grandma Audrey, I found the storybook you gave me, the one with your name in it. I remember you reading it. I miss you. Love, Caleb. I pressed the card to my chest and cried. Not tears of grief, tears of release. 1 week later, I visited the cemetery. The air was still, warm. I knelt beside Marcus's grave, brushing away the fallen leaves. They tried to rewrite your will, I whispered. But they couldn't rewrite your heart. And I laid down something I had made with my own hands, a pie crust in the shape of a rose baked in silence, flavored with everything I had been too tired to say. I didn't choose the basement. I didn't choose silence. And I didn't choose to be erased. I chose to remember who I was before their cruelty. I chose to protect your memory, Marcus. And I chose to become Audrey Wilson again. Not the help, not the ghost in the hallway, not the forgotten old woman, but a woman who rebuilt, and stood back up. I am Audrey Wilson, and I have returned. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own home? Have you ever watched the people you raised, the ones you gave everything for, turn your silence into permission, your kindness into invisibility? Then tell us, what would you do if your daughter-in-law moved your belongings to the basement without even looking you in the eye? Have you ever been erased from the very life you helped build? Comment your story, and don't forget to include the name of your city. Let's remind the world that we exist in every town, every family, every generation. And if you want to hear what happened when I finally faced her, when I had a chance to reclaim everything, then subscribe. Because the story isn't over yet. It never is. When women like us decide to speak. Subscribe now. Your voice matters. Your story matters.